Thank you very much for being curious to know a little bit more about this graph that I presented last night at the Virginia Beach City Public Schools school board meeting for the Gifted Citizens Advisory Council presentation. Item number one was continuing to build relationship with our division staff to create meaningful indicators for the gifted students and, frankly, all students in Virginia Beach. And now that we have the NWEA MAP, Measures of Academic Progress, available to us, we have data that gives us a great opportunity to understand our population. And with good data, we can make good decisions. So I brought this one graph to show just an example of a starting point. And I was asked to share a little bit more about this graph and what does it mean. So I'm going to try to keep this brief. So what we're seeing here is a profile of first through sixth graders from a school district that our family was lucky enough to be a part of, and they allowed me to support them with some pro bono data analysis with their MAP data. So what you see here on the left is the graduation year for the students. So first graders here are 2024, which means they graduated high school last year. And then up here is the sixth graders. I hope you can see my cursor here. So 2024 is the first graders. If you can't see my cursor, it's the bottommost green box. And then as you orient yourself to this graph, the red lines going up and down, the vertical red lines are essentially the starting points for each of these grades. So they are the national median for all of the MAP tests done that year. That is the median for all of the entering first graders. That's where they started. That was their RIT that year. It's around 160. And then going to the right, these are the second graders, the third graders, fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. And you can see the distance between the red lines decreases over time. That means there's less expected growth each year that the children are in school. So it's around 11 or 12 at the beginning in first and second grade, and then it moves down to around 7 or 8, and then 5 or 6 or so by the time they're leaving sixth grade. And then down here, let's look at the first graders, and then you'll be able to extrapolate to the other grades. This green box down here contains 50% of the students, and then this line in the middle is the median. So you can see the median is higher than and probably around spring, maybe winter or spring for that year. So it's higher than the fall, and half of the kids are several months ahead when they start the school year down here. That's what this means. And then these whiskers out here, it's a somewhat little complicated estimate, but basically you take the interquartile range. So from this part of the box to the rightmost part of the box, you measure that distance between the 2 points, and then you multiply that by 1.5. So that just creates a boundary for most of the students, okay, a distribution curve. And then the little dots on the outside, those are individual students, those are outliers. So as you look across the graph, you can see that there's a lot of outliers in the fourth graders. There's outliers in each of the grade levels. And you can see those outliers are many grades ahead. Down here in first grade, if we just study this for a second, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 4 or 5 students whose beginning of the year RIT or their MAP score is at second, third, fourth, around fourth grade or fifth grade. So they're doing fourth or fifth grade work already, capable of that, according to this adaptive test, when they enter first grade. So for these students, you would really want to be thinking about how are we going to meet their needs? If they're starting here at fourth or fifth grade, what are we going to do for them? You could consider what we called back then walk to math. That means literally walk to math up here with their intellectual peers. You may call it something else, but that is one strategy to allow them to do that. That's actually a good strategy. Some of these kids will find their first friend in this class here because these are kids who are interested potentially in similar things. They may be emotionally about at the same place. Believe it or not, gifted kids are often thought to have a lot of asynchronous development and maybe not emotionally ready for a more mature friendship. But the truth is they progress through the friendship stages pretty quickly, and they may well find a good friend in one of these upper grades. So it's not only an intellectually appropriate consideration, but social and emotional as well. And so then looking here at all of these grades, you can see that the medians are to the right each time, such that by fourth grade, this median is up at fifth grade. So these kids are essentially ready for fifth grade work. The entire fourth grade is essentially ready for being considered peers of the fifth grade. And then the fifth grade is already here at sixth grade. So really interesting challenge there, right? So the pushback that I often heard is for acceleration. Well, what if they're giving fifth graders sixth grade work? What does the sixth grade teacher then do? Well, the story continues because look up here at the sixth grade. The sixth grade teacher has students who are testing all of them ready for seventh grade. And so this entire district needed a new approach to their math curriculum. And they did that. They built that. And they created new classrooms and we're really ahead of the curve here as far as innovating. So this is a good starting point. There are two things I recommended at the meeting last night when I was asked by Mr. Cummings, what should we do? The first one is an approach like this. So demographics, who are the students? Where are they? You could do this by building. You could do it by grade. You could do it by classroom. So if you considered looking at your first grade classes across the district, you could find teachers that have a lot more variation than others maybe, and think about redistributing the kids into classes to make more homogeneous groups, because that is a lot easier for the teachers to accommodate. It's a lot easier for the students who are a little bit behind to feel comfortable catching up. And it also allows the teacher to be really comfortable with the curriculum designed for that group instead of trying to accommodate kids across how many grade levels is this? 5 grade levels at least in one classroom. So that's where I would start, is understanding your students. Where are they? What are their needs? And how is our curriculum aligned to support them? How are we meeting their intellectual needs? And what else do we need to do to innovate? And then the next thing that you would want to think about is growth. So imagine these little boxes, but now you have the opportunity to look at who's growing and who isn't. So if you were to take this first grade box, for instance, and you would divide it up into subgroups, so maybe you would look at all students and then pull out the gifted students and create two little boxes. You might see, well, that's interesting. In our early grades, and we did find this, in our early grades, the gifted students had negative growth. Whereas, and I did something strange here, whereas the students who were roughly on grade level had expected growth, and the kids who were behind had gangbusters growth. So that was remedied by more intentional differentiation of instruction, by pull-out groups, by extensions, and by a new curriculum. So it's very important to start with the knowledge of where your students are, but then move into a growth orientation, which students are growing and which students aren't, and creating graphs like this that allow you to really visualize it. Then you will have a deep and robust understanding of your students. I hope this is really helpful. As you can see, there are 48 slides in this deck. So if you want to know more about any of them and the other views that are possible, please just reach out. I'll give you a little teaser here. These are other ways to look at your school district. So these are the same 6 grades. And in blue is the kids who are below grade level. And then in orange, as I alluded to, is 2 grade levels ahead. And then the gray is on grade level. So we really see quite a lot of fanning out of ability as the kids get older. And we expect that with good differentiation of instruction, all kids have a chance to grow. And so the challenge in the classroom gets more and more and more interesting as the kids get older, because we do expect that our most advanced kids, those outliers in the previous graph, if we're doing our jobs well, the outliers are still growing. And so we do expect to see more and more of a fanning as the kids get older. So we need to be very intentional about the 3rd through the 6th grades and making sure that all kids, not just the gifted kids, all kids have access to appropriate instruction. And that's a note I would make about these whiskers here that I neglected to mention. You really want to look at, are all of the kids here, and especially the outliers, are they in your gifted program? Have you identified them? Because you may have missed them. Some of these kids will not be too interested in performing with a pencil paper test or even a computer test on COGAT or NNAT, but they might be quite happy to do the MAP test. They might see it as more of a game. So I would take a look at all of the kids in the whiskers and see, are they in my gifted program or not, and give them a second look. At the very least, whether or not they're identified gifted, differentiation of instruction is the appropriate response here. They do not need to be gifted to be deserving of a chance to grow while they're in school. So thank you again for your attention to this. I would be more than happy to discuss this with you and any strategies or additional literature you might be interested in.